I think that he reached out to him 11 times, and
Wow.
he got a meeting out on the 11th try, I think it was. And
So he got ignored 10 times.
Right,
Same guy ignored him 10 times, and then he reaches out. He gets ignored, blown off 10 times, and he says, you know what, let me try it again.
Yeah. And that has been what he's done. He's been very, very persistent. And if he's discouraged by the no's, you can't see it. I'm sure he is, but you can't see it. I think he understands that success is built on a series of interim failures.
Hello, and welcome to the show. Today, we're sitting down in the Private Lending podcast studio in Golf Simulator with the founder of Private Lending LLC himself, John Paul Houston. If you're from our hometown of Floyd, Virginia, there's a good chance you personally know John. John has lived in Floyd, which is a population of 448 people his entire life. In many ways, he's one of the main inspirations for the podcast. John has managed to be successful and a serial entrepreneur without ever leaving his town, and he's built a quite impressive resume. He's proof that you can find and create opportunities in a small town, and today he's sharing his story of entrepreneurship, along with some of the lessons he's learned along the way. John?
Thank you, Aaron.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Well,
tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, great. Well, I'm just a guy from Floyd, Virginia, who never left. I've been here all of my 62 years, and I think a lot of my story is proof that you can build meaningful things without moving to the big city. And just a little background, Randy and I have been married for 39 years. We've never lived more than 7 miles from where we are right now. We have 15 grandkids, 8 children, 15 grandkids, 2 more grandkids on the way. And all of my kids with children live in the county here, and this is all we've really known, and for us, family has been the centerpiece of everything that we've done. We talked a little bit about entrepreneurship earlier. Entrepreneurship for me was never about chasing titles or building things. It was, I guess, a lifestyle decision. It was more about freedom, about stewardship, creating opportunities for the people that I worked with. Just as a little background, I started in financial services, and the season of life which was insurance and financial planning, for me was something that taught me a lot about people. It taught me about trust. It taught me about risk. I learned pretty quickly that money is emotional for most people, and if you can help people make wise decisions, you can change people's lives for the better. Later on, I became involved with Bank of Floyd during a pretty turbulent time, and I ended up serving as chairman of Bank of Floyd and was part of the group of folks who led Bank of Floyd into a partnership that became Skyline National Bank, and learned a lot during that time. And one of the things that I learned was how important community banking is to small towns, critically important. And in Floyd, we've got 2 smaller, I guess you'd call community banks. They're not small banks by any stretch of the imagination. Skyline National and Carter Bank, and where we do business also in southern West Virginia, rural southern West Virginia. You've got great banks there like Pioneer Community Bank, Pendleton Community Bank, Whitesville State Bank. And these community banks make a huge difference in the communities where we live and work, and are critical to the success of these communities. And it was a good time for me. It was a time I learned a lot and was challenged and sort of grew a lot as a business owner. Later, I just, well, really, it was, I guess, about the same time Rainey and I were building Sweet Providence Farm. And this was something that started for us in 1999, but we worked through, through the early 2000s before handing a couple of these businesses over to children and their spouses. But Sweet Providence was a fascinating time. We started a farm that eventually became known for Christmas trees. My son now runs the Christmas tree side of that business. John William and his wife Emily are the Christmas tree farmers now. And that business taught me a lot. It taught me, for one thing, it taught me patience, because Christmas trees don't grow overnight. It takes a lot of time, and for that matter, neither do businesses or people. It's usually more time than you think.
I love that.
And yeah, so Sweet Providence Farm led to another business, which is now Tendergrass. And this business started very small, raising and butchering chickens in the backyard, broiler chickens. We raised them on the farm, we butchered them on the farm, we sold them from the farm. And this eventually, under the leadership of my son-in-law and daughter, David and Ann Marin, evolved into a much larger business than I would have ever imagined. And watching my son-in-law, David, take that business into a national leader in overcoming supply and demand challenges in the protein space, the meat space, has probably been one of the most rewarding things which I've experienced as an entrepreneur. And it's a great reminder to me that an important part of leadership is eventually being able to hand that baton off to the next generation of leaders, or, as I've been blessed in my family, to the next generation, literally. So it's been a fun experience, and it continues to be enjoyable watching David grow that business. Most recently, I've founded two businesses. One, both real estate related businesses. One, private lending, and that business lends money to primarily fix and flippers, fix and renters, people. We do short-term, very niche real estate financing, and also Providence Real Estate. And Providence Real Estate is focused on renovations. It's focused on buying and holding long-term rentals, primarily multifamily rentals, and both of those businesses are a lot of fun. I love this work because it's tangible. You can see the results of what you're doing. You see a distressed property, and you either finance it or you do the work yourself, and you see that become a great new property. And you go from seeing a boarded up house to seeing a beautiful house with maybe some kids playing in the backyard, and it's a feel good thing.
That's fantastic. Actually, before we go on, I want to dive into that just a little bit. Now, I guess maybe ask a follow-up question, because obviously, if for those of you guys that don't know me, I'm one of the folks on the private lending side, and Private Lending LLC is the sponsor of this podcast, and we lend money to people who are primarily short-term real estate financing, and primarily they're people who are fixing up, selling, or renting these houses. And you're doing that with your real estate in Beckley. And for a lot of folks, even probably my younger self, I probably would have never understood the vision of that, because I was like, well, why would you're going to buy a house and try to fix it up and sell it for a profit. I don't know why you'd want to do that. But now that I've been a part of this, for a while, it's been a really beautiful process. Obviously, there's people who do, like any industry, there's people who do a bad job at it. But it's been really cool to watch that restoration process and watch some of the folks that we lend to, and even you with your own company, going into these rural markets and really fixing up a lot of these houses and getting them online so that they're livable and a family can come and live in it. Tell me about that. What do you love? What do you find fulfilling about that process and what you do?
Yeah, it's great to ride down the street and see a neighborhood get better because somebody, whether it's us at Providence Real Estate or through our lending at private lending, somebody's taken the initiative to take on a project to make something better, to make a home, an old house better, to make a neighborhood better, to help people. I know one of the things we try to do with Providence Real Estate, we try to encourage home ownership. And it's really great to see a house that was a rental property that had gone downhill be fixed up and sold and become owner occupied again. And it makes neighborhoods better. It helps people, and it's just a lot of fun. We enjoy doing it.
I know I'm sure you've had some characters that you've got to meet along the way. You have any good stories for us on that?
A lot of stories, a few good stories. I'll tell you, can I share my favorite story?
Yeah.
So in Beckley, small town, southern West Virginia, we had a tenant who was in a building that we bought. So this was a distressed property. The electric was terrible. Just the condition of the building was bad. It was a good building. It was a brick building. The bones were good, as they say. So we bought it and did a major rehab on this building. And one of the tenants who we grew to dearly love was a gentleman. His first name was Carl. Well, we just fell in love with Carl. And Carl was a tremendous tenant. I mean, we really liked him. He was super appreciative of what we had done in making the apartment building where he was living better. And you know, we just developed a deep relationship with him. The whole staff there in Beckley did. And we had purchased a 2-bedroom house that was not too far away, and we rehabbed that house, and Carl knew what was going on, and he said, hey, could I move into that house? Could I rent that house? And well, yeah, sure, you know, that'd be great. I think the rent was a little bit higher than what he was paying in the apartment, but not much. And it was a nice house. It was a 2-bedroom house, and you know, we fixed it up a little bit, and you know, AC, a nice fenced-in backyard, and in a nice neighborhood, and we rented that house to Carl, and he just kept making it better. He wanted to keep working on it, keep making it better, just because he had great pride in the house he was living in. And I don't exactly know how this happened, but we ended up selling the house to Carl. And Carl's about my age, and he's never owned a house before. And Carl's a homeowner now. He works at one of the Marriott properties in Beckley, and he's got a good job, and he works hard, and he's made that house even better. And when I ride down Glen Avenue and I see that house, I always smile, and I keep up with Carl. We talk every now and then, and I'm really happy because he's a homeowner now. And curiously, his rent is just I don't know, it's about the same, or I know it's not even $100 more, or rather his payment is not even $100 more than he was paying in rent before. And, you know, I think it was nice because we were a part of the process, and him living in a house. And the house was, we bought it really cheap, and I think he paid $85,000 for it. And
wow.
And Carl's a homeowner.
Yeah.
And he keeps up with us, and I keep up with him, and I'm happy. It makes you feel good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I totally agree. It's one of the things that kind of makes private lending special for me. You know, I came from the commercial banking side, but now that you're in private lending, we're working directly with these people who are flipping these houses, or we're doing these other deals, but a lot of them are flipping houses or renting houses. And just being able to see the impact that when they do it well, the impact they have on the community, where it's right now, you know, some of these houses that they're buying, like you said, you sold that house for $85,000, and there's just no one building these houses no one's building starter homes anymore. And, you know, it's really cool to see these folks take these old houses that are really unlivable and restore them in a way where someone who, is making probably what $15 an hour is able to afford.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that's really cool.
Well, this was like an 850 square foot house, and if you built that house new, you're looking best case 160, 180,000.
Yeah.
And it's functionally, it's in good shape. The electric's good. It's got good heating system. It's got AC.
But
it's a nice house.
Someone's got to restore it.
Yeah, but somebody's got to go in and restore it. That's exactly right.
And so, I think that's same thing for us, is just being able to fund some of this work that's going on in our communities in Floyd. We've done some deals in Floyd, obviously, but in Roanoke and Rocky Mount and Southwest Virginia. I mean, we've gone up as far as Woodstock, Virginia, and I think that's been just really cool to get to see that process of restoration play out and feel like we're a part of that value chain, like you said, and doing something that puts more Carls in a home ownership position where they have a sense of pride and a sense of ownership. But let's move on. So one thing I do want to focus on today is, because you've got such a wide resume, and so we'll probably have to invite you back. We know where you live, so we'll probably drag you back on this podcast. But I'd love to hone in a little bit on that chicken business you talked about, and the reason why is I think it's tremendously funny when we have investors come in here for meetings, or they come here to see our office, or sometimes borrowers will come by to just see what we're doing and where we work, and then they see this golf simulator that we're sitting inside right now, filming a podcast, and they're like, wow, this is a huge private lending operation out of Floyd, Virginia. But what they don't understand is that this was all built by the chicken business. This was,
yeah, that's right.
It was paid for 1 pound of chicken at a time.
It really was. And the chicken business, Tendergrass, it's an overnight success story that was about, I don't know, 10 years in the making, you could say. And again, this was, my son-in-law David and my daughter Ann. It was their ability to see what was and what is, and also see what could be. And it's a fundamental success story that was based on an ability to solve problems. And if you can solve real problems, you can make money doing it. And David was able to identify problems based on what he learned from just a backyard chicken business. He was able to identify problems at a national level and solve those problems. Now, what was curious about the way he did it, he was solving problems for people he was selling to, but he was also solving problems for people he was buying from. So the people that were raising chickens had problems that David could solve, and the people that needed certain products that they couldn't get easily in the market, he was saving problems for them as well. And so it was a great business, a great business story, and continues to be. The business continues to grow, and it's doing quite well. It started with just a few chickens in the backyard. We bought, I think the first year, 50 broiler chickens that we raised in the backyard, and we butchered. And we filled our freezer and ate them all. We ate a lot of chicken. We had, and I remember when the kids were a little bigger, there were times we would have 3 chickens for dinner. It took a lot to feed 800 kids.
You don't make a lot of money when you eat all the inventory.
I know. I think we didn't make a lot of money at that stage of life when we were selling all the chickens. But the 50 became 100, then 250, then 500, then 1,000, then 2,500. In the last 2 years we raised the chickens, we raised 5,000 a year, right behind the house in Floyd, Virginia, on the farmhouse. We had 70 acres there. And so what happened, what started out as a small business grew, and that business, and let me tell you, it was hard. I can remember going out at 5 o'clock on Monday mornings, and I'd start to scald I remember it was 142 degrees. That was the perfect scald temperature for chicken processing. And coming back in the house and waking the kids and 5:45, 6 o'clock in the morning, walking up the stairs singing "It's a Good Day to Kill Chickens." I would sing a little song, and the kids would come downstairs and very quietly eat breakfast. And we'd go out and butcher chickens till lunchtime, and we could butcher a couple hundred before lunch. So we eventually had good setup, and we bought a second scalder at a Virginia Tech surplus sale. We built a chicken plucker, believe it or not. We built our own chicken plucker.
You designed it?
No, I bought a design for $18 on eBay and and scavenged the parts out of a 55-gallon drum, and I think it was a 1.5 horsepower motor with a couple of gear downs on it, and it was really good. We could pluck 3 chickens in 30 seconds.
There's not many private lenders that have also built a chicken plucker.
I need to put that on my resume, maybe. I don't know, but it was a fun time, and it was a rich time with the kids. David and Ann married 15 years ago, and David was working for the Virginia State Police and in an administrative clerical position. I think I've heard him use the term a glorified secretary is what he was doing. He was a recent University of Tennessee graduate with a Spanish major, and so he's working.
We won't hold that against him too much, I guess.
And so he comes to work on the farm. I said, well, look, why don't you come work on the farm? You're not making much for the state police. And I remember he came to work on the farm, and he was paid $28,000. That was his salary.
Well, before all our listeners, I mean, this is a podcast called Small Town Wealth Builders. So before all our listeners immediately just turn off the podcast and never listen to us again, it does get better.
It does get better, but there's a curious lesson in it, because if you want to put more zeros on the number down the road, sometimes you got to start out with fewer zeros, because there's a lot of sacrifice in the early days. Now, I don't know if we were sacrificing because we didn't really have anything to sacrifice, because the farm wasn't profitable, but it was doing other things for us. It was giving us a great lifestyle, which we enjoyed, and we ate good food. We built a farm store, which was a lot of fun. My daughters ran a bakery in the farm store. We had fun. It was a good time for us. But David comes along, and after about 6 months, he and I were meeting one day, and he said, I think we need to close the store. And I said, well, I appreciate that that's what you think, but we're not going to close the store. And of course, he was right, and I was less right. And so we wound up kind of modifying things, and we changed the chicken business to and our goal was to kind of become the Omaha Steaks of organic chicken. And we had a national chicken business that was, it was growing. It was again not particularly profitable, but David was learning, and he's an incredible learner. And one of the many reasons he's been successful is he has had an ability to build relationships with people, and he can find people who can teach him and help him, and he develops those relationships, and he works hard to get those relationships. And through his relationship building, he was able to grow this business.
That's awesome. And one of the things we want to do here, this is the first episode of this podcast, is we want to help folks who maybe are in a small town, maybe in Floyd, maybe in another small town, and they think, man, I love my small town, but I want to do something with my life, and I can't do it here, or I don't know how, even if I could. And we want to show them and prove to them, that you can do it here. And it's something. I graduated Floyd County High School in 2013, go Buffaloes, and I thought I had to leave to do anything. And coming back, and now coming back and working here in private lending with you, and seeing all these people that are doing incredible things, I didn't know that. And if we can kind of share some of that with our listeners, and so maybe one of our listeners, we may have some listeners out there saying, oh, that's all well and good, but like I don't have relationships. I have a vision, I have ambition, but I don't have relationships. Well, did David did David have those relationships up front? Did he have to build them? And if he had to build them, how did he do it?
Oh no, he didn't have them up front. He built them, and it was hard. He talked to dozens and dozens of people who didn't want to help him just to find one that did, and he did that over and over and over again. And he talked to way up in the hundreds. He's probably asked 1,000 people for help and found a handful of people who would help him. He had a big break early on. He connected with a stock analyst, which dealing in the food business, which was a big help, and that led him to meet Jim Perdue, the chairman of Perdue Foods.
Wow.
And that relationship led him to meet Randy Day, who was one of the presidents at the time and wound up being the president of the entire conglomerate later on, as I understand it. And he...
Just to be clear, the conglomerate you're talking about is Perdue
Foods,
one of the largest chicken sellers
right.
in the country and the world, I would imagine.
Yeah, and he was able to identify problems and figure out some solutions, and that was how it started. He developed relationships with the USDA, FSIS, the food labeling people in Washington, D.C. He had first-name relationships with them, wound up with the little piece on Dr. Oz, New York Times, National Public Radio, and a lot of tremendous mentorships that he developed. He picked my brain a lot in the early days and kind of learned, I didn't have a whole lot more to teach him after a few years, but he kept growing and learning and seeking out people who had been successful in business and life and learning from them. And he is just a great example of persistence. That business was not very successful for a lot of years, but he worked tirelessly and through sweat and literal tears and try, fail, adjust, repeat dozens and dozens of times. And he has become very successful, and he employs, I guess, 25 or 30 people now in that business. And it's a model that what he's done, I predict will be taught in business school someday. It's really incredible.
Oh, and for the listeners, where is that business located?
Floyd, Virginia.
Floyd, Virginia. And, I think one of the things that we want to do here, like I said, we want to make sure that people know that you can build wealth in a small town. And we want to also give them some tips and share some lessons that we've learned on how you can actually do it. But one of the things we need to do to make sure we do that is we got to be honest, right? And can't fluff this up. And I'm hearing you talk, right? And it sounds like you achieved some incredible success with it, but it also sounds like it was really hard. It sounds like there was a long period where you said David was getting paid $28,000 a year and working hard, and you said literal tears. So I imagine it was probably a tough.
Oh yeah, we had the farm.
It probably wasn't an easy $28,000 a year.
We had the farm store, and we were closed on Sundays. And one of the highlights is if there were ripe avocados that were going to spoil, we could take them home with us and make guacamole, and that was a big treat. We'd have leftover pies or leftover. We smoked ribs and smoked barbecue. We had great barbecue, and we had something left over. It was always a big treat, and we had a good time, but it was very, very hard, and it was filled with disappointment. But it was we always, I think, had an attitude that the disappointments were temporary, and I think for whatever reason we understood that it was a necessary part of getting to whatever goal we had for whatever business, that there were going to be a lot of disappointments. It was going to be hard. I got into the financial planning world full time in 2007, and that was right before the biggest correction, the biggest market correction in my lifetime. That was hard.
Wow. Yeah, I sounds like it was not an easy. I can't imagine farming chickens ever been easy.
No.
But it sounds like that was particularly tough. Now, Let me ask you this. I mean, because for those who don't know, that business is still running. You have since exited the
Right.
business and gone on to what you're doing
Right.
right now with private lending, what we're doing in Providence. But in that time, what do you think? What was the biggest lesson that you learned in that
Oh, wow.
season of life and that business?
Well, great question. I think success is not one big breakthrough. Okay, I mean it's you show up consistently, you treat people right, take some calculated risks, and just stay faithful over a long period of time.
It's great advice. For those of us who, maybe there's folks who want to understand a little bit more about that, tell us, especially let's hone in on the calculated risk, right? Because, what is it actually, what do you mean by that? What does it look like? What was a calculated risk that you guys took early on in the chicken business?
Yeah, well, the chicken business is a great example. David was working very, very hard, and I felt like he had very good ideas. He could stay the course. He was consistent, and we put a lot of money into the growth of that business in the early days. Rainey and I did, and but we believed in him. And it wasn't that we just loved him as our son-in-law, which we did. We loved him dearly. He's just all three of them. I've got three great son-in-laws and a tremendous daughter-in-law, and I love them all dearly. But David was doing the right things. He just hadn't been successful yet, and so we invested in that and took some risks and put our time and money in it, and he became successful. That was a big risk.
What were the right things that he was doing that told you that this isn't just a blind risk, this is actually a calculated risk? There's something there that we're genuinely investing in.
He had tremendous market analysis, market presence. He was building relationships with people who were successful in the business, who were mentoring him, and it just made sense. He was working hard, but he wasn't just working hard, he was working smart. And honest, intelligent effort, I really believe this, honest, intelligent effort is always rewarded.
Okay. So for someone, like I said, who's looking, listening and thinking, how does that actually work? How do I build that? It's not just working hard. Of course it's working hard, obviously.
Right.
This is a story of hard work, but it's also, it sounds like a story of being really intentional about building relationships. And you told me he got a meeting with Jim Purdue. And
Right.
How did he do that? How did he get the meeting?
Oh, yeah, well, he was, through some other intentional efforts, he was invited to a food symposium in Manhattan and invited me to go along with him. And so we fly up to New York one morning, and we're at a food symposium, and we wind up at the same table with Jim Purdue. And David and Mr. Purdue exchange cards, and David comes back home and he reaches out, and Jim Purdue doesn't respond. Well, a lot of people would say, well, I tried and he's probably busy, I'm just not going to bother him. Well, David reached out again and again, and I think that he reached out to him 11 times, and
wow,
he got a meeting on the 11th try, I think it was. And
so he got ignored 10 times.
Right.
Same guy ignored him 10 times. Right. And then he reaches out. He gets ignored, blown off 10 times, and he says, you know what, let me try it again.
Yeah. And that has been what he's done. He's been very, very persistent. And if he's discouraged by the no's, you can't see it. I'm sure he is, but you can't see it. I think he understands that success is built on a series of interim failures.
Success is built on a series of interim failures.
Yeah. And something messes up or blows up, and his attitude's always been, well, I'm learning something here. And it's not just a cliche. I mean, he really is learning something. I mean, somebody a year ago beat him out of a tremendous amount of money. Well, I learned something here, and it was just a great attitude, and it was almost an attitude of fascination where a lot of people would, have their head buried in the palms of their hands, and he's not been that way. And I think the business will continue to grow because he continues to learn and he continues to build relationships with people who are very successful.
That's fantastic. What a great story. I think, thank you for sharing that. I think it's probably all the time we have today. But we'll probably, like I said, we know where you live. And so we'll probably find you and get you back on the show because I know you've got multiple businesses, not only the ones we're doing now, but some other ones in your past that I think we could really take some great lessons out of.
I like to be close to the golf simulator. So
Right.
You've got me in my natural habitat, I think.
So let's end with this. Just tell the folks, if anyone's listening, what are you up to, and where can people find you?
Yeah, so I'm involved in two businesses now. I'm the primary investor in private lending, which we've discussed earlier, which is a business that Aaron and David Richards run. And
David's our technical genius off camera, by the way.
He's the guy behind the cameras right now.
He's we don't bring him on here because he's too good looking, and then we'd probably get.
You don't want to. You want to.
Yeah, you got to have.
He's got the good hair too, and so David and Aaron are doing a great job building that business. And I'm the primary investor, and I serve as a consultant and as somebody that just gets out in the community and talks to a lot of folks. And Providence Real Estate is a Beckley based business, I guess you could say, or you could even say it's Florida, Virginia based business. It's really kind of in both places. But Ronnie Rigney and Rob Hogan are involved in that business. They do the heavy lifting there. I've got two tremendous partners there, two tremendous partners here, and I just sort of go around and drink up their coffee, I guess. But I enjoy both places. I split my time. I'm usually in West Virginia a day or two a week, and in Virginia, the rest of the time. But Providence Real Estate buys and renovates real estate. We have taken some very, very distressed properties. A 20-plex in Oak Hill, West Virginia, we've renovated, and it's fully rented now. We've renovated a 29. We've done a 29-unit hotel to apartment renovation in Beckley, and we are almost finished with a 27-plex renovation, which was incredibly distressed. I mean, it was a project. We stripped everything down to the concrete wall, 6 stories, and we stripped it all the way down to the concrete. And that will be online in September, I hope. And we own a fair amount of smaller multifamily properties, and we do fix and flips on single families. And that's kind of what I do, just to go around and encourage people to say thank you. And I've been blessed to surround myself with some really, really fine folks. My youngest son, Samuel, has interest in real estate, and he's working with Providence Real Estate on a part-time basis. So it'll be interesting to see if he comes along and decides he wants to grab the entrepreneurial reins as well. So we'll see.
Well, awesome. Well, thanks for being on,
It's been a
John.
pleasure. It's been fun.
We'll
Thank
catch you around.
All right.